Hi beautiful beings, my name is Brittany.
And I'm Connor.
And today we're going to be talking about why we chose to free birth our child, Ilya Gray Fox.
Ilya is 9 months, almost 9 months, and yeah, I think this topic is just incredibly powerful to speak on. And of course, we've referenced it a lot. We also have a free birth video,
a full-on video,
which shows the whole process, and you can get onto our website to access that. We'll put a link down below in the description box. Free. Our membership site is growing, and we want you to be a part of it.
We have over 100 videos, so many exercises, tons of ways for you to learn, grow, heal, and inspire with us.
Come on over and see what it's all about.
And maybe we can start by saying what free birth is.
Yeah.
So actually the official definition is unassisted childbirth. So, which basically refers to giving birth without medical assistance or interventions. It's also called undisturbed birth, which I like that.
Undisturbed, yeah.
I mean, I like natural birth as well, although I think that those meanings in our society signify a lot of different things.
Yes, natural birth, sometimes people refer to having a vaginal birth as being a natural birth, and some people refer to natural birth as not using any drugs. Yeah. But most of the time when people talk about natural birth, they're still talking about a hospital birth, and at the very least, an at-home birth specifies that it was at home, but oftentimes that refers to or has the assumption that there's a midwife or some other kind of practitioner there. And free birth is just truly unassisted. And yeah, I mean, I think that hearing from you primarily sounds really good. And I also am so grateful that I get to be here because it was a huge process for me, even though I wasn't the one carrying Ilya or giving birth to them.
Oh, yeah.
It was a massive, it was the biggest thing that I've ever participated in my life. And I think it's really cool to have a place at the table to discuss this process. So thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you.
I'm so grateful that you're here, that we're doing this video together, because it has been such a process for both of us. And I think your perspective is just as important. And the support that we receive around something that we're doing, especially something radical that's different, is super important.
Yeah, it really is.
So what we did was, when we say we free birthed Ilya, what that meant for us is that it was myself and Connor and Ilya at home. We did a home birth. I birthed Ilya in water, so I was in the birthing tub a lot. And free birth for people can look different depending on. So some people, their version of unassisted still means that they have a support group of people around. I had a support group as well that was you, and it could have included more people, and we still could have, that could have been considered a free birth. So, I mean, the definition is loose, and I think it's more that you are free. In a way, free birth is like being free to choose your own birth path.
Yeah.
And before we share about the specifics of why we chose this, I want to say that we're sharing this really as an offering to share our experience. And like every topic, I don't at all feel that there is one way. I feel like there are a million right ways. There are infinite right ways, and only we can know what's right for us. And that's always changing as well. We're changing beings, and what is resonating with us is always changing. So this is an offering for you to hear more about this. If you're curious, we've received a lot of curiosities. And what you get to do with this is try on the different things, how they feel in your system, and then let that guide you more towards what you're wanting in your life, whether it has to do with childbirth or something else entirely.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing in life is to know that you've made the right decision for you. And when we can really take on that power, it doesn't really matter what anyone else might feel about our choices, because we just know, like, that's really your thing. I know I did the best thing for me. And that's what we want to encourage everyone to do the best thing for you. And I think that comes when we are open to receiving other people's experiences, doing some of our own research, and trying on different possibilities. And really being open to what those possibilities bring up in us, and taking a hard look at what could be kind of preventing us from really being in that powerful place of making our own choices. So regardless of how you choose to birth, we 100% support you, and what we want to encourage everyone to find is that place of power within themselves to do what's best for you. So I think it would be cool to really hear, specifically, what free birth meant to you. And of course I can share a little bit on my end too, but what free birth meant to you, and what it actually looked like. I know you kind of gave a quick synopsis of the setup,
right?
But maybe we could go into that a little bit more.
Okay, yeah. I think by the time we had Ilya by the time we got pregnant with Ilya, which was a really intentional process for us, that I probably wanted to have a free birth. But when I first heard about free birth, I was like, this is crazy. And I had sort of felt forever that I would have a home birth.
Yeah.
And when I saw our friend had free birthed her child, and when I watched her video sharing about it, I was like, this is so radical. At the time it was like, this is insane for me to conceptualize. She was just there with her partner and they had a baby. Wow. And it also struck a chord within me, deep within me, that felt like, whoa, I just got chills thinking about it. And it led me down this path of research and gaining more data. And that came from a process of feeling within myself first, in my intuition, which felt like, I'm an animal. I'm a human animal. I'm a primate. I'm like all the other animals that have these natural processes in our body, and my body's gonna birth this baby.
Yeah.
And just like everything else, just like our body is constantly regenerating and healing and growing, if I can just get out of the way of the process and not disturb the process, but be a cooperative component of the process, then I can have this magical experience, almost like being along for the ride of this soul coming through me. And I found some really helpful resources. One of them was the Indie Birth podcast, which is called Taking Back Birth. And Marin does that. She's incredible. We actually were featured on there sharing our birth story. And it was so helpful for me just to hear more about the natural process of birth, how it occurs in our bodies, and what can often come up that can disturb the process of birth. And so if we think about how we used to birth in nature, we would have these natural feedback systems, for example, to stop the process of birth if there was a stressor coming into the environment. So if there is a bear that's about to eat you, you probably want to wait on pushing your baby out. So it slows things down. And learning how common these things are in most birthing environments, such as just checks, regular checks, seeing how far along you are, how you're progressing, as if there's some idea of what that's supposed to look like. There being lights in the room, just people around. I also have enjoyed looking at birth, making love and being in this flow, whether that's with yourself or someone else, just being in this intuitive flow, really sinking into our bodies and imagining in that flow, and then somebody coming in. So I felt into that, and I was like, well, what could take me out of my flow? And it kind of felt like everything.
Yeah.
Everything could potentially take me out of my flow, except for a space that I could really be fully myself and feel into my intuitive and primal nature. And I love that I felt like I could do that with you, because I do think that I really needed the support. And I think I needed the support because I chose that path. And I'm sure some people free birth on their own. I know some people do. And I loved having you there. And I loved that you could help hold this container that I had the intention for. And for me, imagining having a midwife there, even the best case scenario, and we did talk to a doula, and I tried on the idea of midwives, it all felt like it would be somebody else sort of trying to guide my path. And I felt like that's not what I wanted. I really wanted to be able to make my own decisions and not feel like I was kind of thinking about them all the time, or that they were suggesting things to me, suggesting positions or saying based on what I've seen, this might mean this. I really didn't want that. I really wanted to have my own experience. And so that's what I chose, and I chose to do it without doing any sort of checks. I didn't do any checks in terms of seeing a a medical doctor or any sort of doctor during my pregnancy as well, which you could read or watch our video on why we didn't do an ultrasound. And I chose to do the same thing during birth. So I know some people who free birth and they also like to see like how far along they are, if they've dilated, and I didn't want to do that. So my process was really quite intuitive and just felt into it. There's more I want to say, but could you help direct me with the question just based on how you're feeling receiving all this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing to come up to this piece of the story, what comes up for me is the awareness of fear within our culture, and how we're quite a fear-centered culture, in that we tend to have really good skills at identifying things that scare us.
Yes.
And as a result, we create a lot of ways to keep ourselves safe, perceived safety. And one of those is through having other people direct us and tell us what to do, because it helps us kind of feel relaxed and like we're going to be cared for.
Yeah.
So to step into a place of the unknown, because everything is unknown, right? I mean, to a certain degree, we can't know anything. But really in birth, this is like, especially for someone, it's their first time giving birth, this is a massive unknown.
Yeah.
And it's a completely unique experience for every individual. And I don't really believe that anyone can tell you what that process is going to look like. But I think that there is a certain amount of reliance that we're looking for on others and on a structure that allows us to kind of feel safe, because we're focused on the fear. So during this whole process, I think the biggest process for me as an individual was identifying fear that could be in there for me and really seeing it through. And understanding, coming to the conclusion that there really isn't anything to fear. And that I came to the place where I found trust that your body would do exactly what it needed to do. That the ultimate understanding of the process is so deeply embedded in you that we just need to kind of step out of the way and let your body do what it needs to do. Yeah. And throughout this process, we really considered how we discussed this with the world and who we discussed it with. Because being that our culture is so fear-centric, there was the possibility that fear could kind of infiltrate the truth space that we were creating for ourselves. Yeah. And so there are a million infinite kind of like what if scenarios that you could pose now, or that people could have posed during that process. Yeah. And those weren't really worth looking at for us up to a certain point. Yeah. And I just, I think that, again, this for me was the biggest kind of, not hurdle, but like the biggest thing that I needed to bring awareness to and find peace with. Because the truth is that in any situation, no matter what you do in life, there's a possibility for any given outcome. And coming to the conclusion that a hospital or having a midwife or this or that is not going to eliminate those possibilities. But in fact, for us, I think deciding that the best thing, the healthiest thing we could do for ourselves and for our baby is to allow your process to just do its thing and to step out of the way of that.
Yeah, I love this. And I think that you're totally right in that there's so much fear that we've been taught, and that can often get in the way. And that was the main process for me in preparing for free birth, was looking at what my system felt around fear, like what was coming up for me and what was coming up for you. And following that through, like you said, and ultimately understanding what was there and using a lot of tools along the way, like education. I educated myself so much on birth. Like I actually think that I know a lot more about birth and the natural process of birth than most medical professionals, which is crazy and also true, because I know about natural birth and what our bodies are, like the hormones of birth and the natural processes of birth. And most of the time, that's not what's happening in hospitals. It's not undisturbed birth, and it's not even close to it. And it was so cool to recognize like a lot of these fears that were coming up for me, and there were just a couple, and I'm happy to share about them, were actually not relevant. Because these things that we hear about, like somebody hemorrhaging, like bleeding a lot, or a baby getting stuck, or the cord being around the neck and that being dangerous, or needing to resuscitate the baby, or just different things that could come up for people, most of them are occurring in disturbed births. And they're occurring, or my understanding and my feeling is that they're happening because we're disturbing the process of birth. So yeah, we can hear about all these things that are like fearful, and that they're presented to us like, well, I thank God I was at the hospital because it saved this thing, or thank God the midwife knew to do this thing. And my feeling once I followed pretty much all of those things through was like, well, those came up because of those settings, and that actually isn't going to come up for me. And I had so many other great things too that felt like reasons why I was going to rock the birth, which is that I'm really healthy and I'm really embodied and I'm really connected with my intuition. And my body was in amazing shape for the birth. I mean, we were just doing acrobatics 2 days before the birth. I went to ecstatic dance that morning and danced my butt off. And yeah, like it's kind of magical when you find that you can release this resistance that you have just by being present with what's there and understanding it better. And there are a ton of great resources. Actually, I created a page on our website where I answer a lot of questions I had coming up, and specifically addressing fears. And I think that's really what everybody is doing before something like birth. A lot of people are assessing where their system is at and then creating the environment that sounds the best for them. And that's why some people choose a birthing center or a hospital or a midwife at home or Freebirth. And it's all because of this is the environment that sounds like they can be the most comfortable and the most relaxed
Totally.
in.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to like reiterate that I think trumps everything else. It's really like, how do you feel?
Yeah.
And what kind of safety do you need to set yourself up with? I don't think that Brittany and I got to this place of enlightenment and this is like the way that you need to do it, and if you're not doing it, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
I really don't feel that way at all. I also think it's important when there are structures in place that are assumed to be the best for us, that we just take a conscious look at that for ourselves as individuals and ask, like, is that the best for me?
Yeah.
I think like just briefly to say that hospitals, the primary function of hospitals and doctors in the medical industry is to prevent death.
Right.
And if that's your primary focus, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously that saves a lot of lives. Like, that's fantastic. But also, if you're focused on preventing death, you may not have space for creating thriving life or allowing, because there's a fear. You're looking for the thing that you most fear, death, and you're trying to prevent it.
Right.
And so you start to create things that are not there and put attention on areas of, in this case, birth, that really don't need your attention. So I'm not a doctor, obviously, I'm not a midwife, but going through this experience in Freebirth has really solidified some things for me that felt very true, in that I really believe we all know what's best for us. And sometimes what's best for us is to go to the doctor. And sometimes what's best for us is not. And I think that making a conscious decision around that, rather than just going with the assumption that you have to do it because this is what everyone is doing, is the best thing for us.
So beautiful. And you would make an amazing midwife.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
I think really being able to, you would, being able to accurately assess where we're at. And that's a feeling, that's an internal feeling. And knowing what's true for us feels essential for me in this process, because I was able to accurately assess my fears and see where that was for me and what I needed to do to get to a place where I felt like I could fully be in this process. And I didn't have any fear when I was in the process, and I didn't have any fear as I was leading up to the process. For a long time, I felt really ready. And that feels the most important, because we can try to trick ourselves and say, like, I know this is best. I logically know this is best, so I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it right. But the process will let us know where we're at.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, I feel so down to talk about any specifics with anybody that wants to reach out to me, especially if you're considering something like this or just curious about the process. You could set up a session with me. There's also Marin's an amazing resource. I talked to her a couple times. I did a couple sessions with her on the phone just to talk about things that were coming up for me and like what I was feeling about them, and sort of when I followed them through, this is how I felt about it, because it felt cool for me to bounce that off of somebody who I really admire. She's a midwife, and also she's kind of been through, she's had like 8 births of her own, home births. And she also has been through being a medical midwife and then like changing that up so that she could follow more of what she feels is like how to intuitively support somebody, not like based on a structure that we're being told, like you have to support somebody by doing these things. So anyway, she's a great resource. There's the Freebirth Society. That's another great resource podcast. And yeah, I feel like this topic we could kind of talk about endlessly, and it feels cool to let you know that there's so much more we have to offer here. If that's something you're wanting to connect with us one-on-one with me or with both of us, I think we both have amazing perspectives to offer here.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of great books. I read some different books. I just want to mention Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering, because that's a great one. It's written by Sarah Buckley, who's a medical doctor. And she talks about...
You get both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, she's really great. And on that page that I mentioned that we'll link down below, we have a ton of great resources.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say that intentionality is what it's all about. And I do think that for us, we had different things that we needed to do to prepare ourselves for free birth. And, what I witnessed you was like putting in hundreds and hundreds of hours of research. And I felt that you did that in a way that really aligned for you, and taking in what made sense for you to take in, looking at any fears that you may have had, and kind of like being able to do some research to allay those fears and to understand them, to work through them, not just like ignore them. And for me, I did a lot less research, and I did a lot more preparing myself mentally and physically and emotionally, and envisioning what the birth was like, and instilling in myself the ultimate belief that no matter what, this was the right choice for us. And that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal for any human being to come to that truth in any area of life, to fully kind of relax into whatever is coming. And it profoundly affected my life from there on in. It's not just like worth it. It's been so life-changing in so many ways, and to be a part of the birth of Ilya Gray Fox in such a potent way. There's nothing I can say to really explain that effect. It's the best thing in the world. There's just nothing else to say about it. And I'm so grateful that we were presented at some point with this mind-blowing concept of free birth, that it came to us at the exact right time. And we're not necessarily, I wouldn't say, advocates of free birth.
No.
We really want to expand your mind so that you can know what possibilities exist. Keep expanding your mind to choose the best possibility for you, and know that you are 100% supported. I mean, you have our support. No matter what that choice is, if you tell us it's right for you, it's right for you, and that's that.
Yeah, and you really, there's nobody's support you need but your own, and you really know what's best for you.
Yes.
And you got this.
You got it.
Whatever you're going into, you got it. Thanks for being curious about this topic. I love talking about this.
Yeah, it's a big topic. There's a lot of important stuff in here.
Yeah, there really is. There's so much more.
And again, I mean, the Freebirth video that we offer is the real deal. It's raw, it's uncut. We can't really host it on YouTube easily, so we don't. We host it privately. All you got to do is get on to Connor and Brittany, send us your email, and we'll send you the video.
Yeah, there is a YouTube video. It's about 15 minutes that you took and censored the heck out of.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm naked, you know,
yeah,
a baby. That you can check out that sort of snippet and see if you want to watch the full hour and 20-minute video or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's the real deal.
My birth was a lot longer than an hour and 20 minutes.
Just saying.
Okay. Love you.
Love you. Thanks for watching.